Hi, so it's early October and I am just getting ready to plant a load of stuff out in the garden to take us through winter. Right, we're in the Polytunnel, which is where I'm going to start the great winter plant out. So I've got most of my little plug plants in here. Now the Polytunnel is probably my most useful tool for winter growing. A lot of these can be grown outside in winter, but I like the level of assurance that growing in the Polytunnel gives me. It's just a lot less likely to be eaten by things like pigeons and pests and rabbits, which we have here, and the slightly on the cusp frost tender things, they're going to like life in the Polytunnel as well. I'm also hoping that because generally the daytime temperatures in here are going to remain much higher than they are outside, even in winter, that we'll get an earlier harvest on spring crops and more of a consistent harvest on things that are going all the way through winter. So a lot of these will go dormant over winter. That's not because of the heat, that is because of the light levels. So what I want to do is get them in now and get them establishing a little bit of a root system, and then they're going to stop growing and they're not going to do a lot, most of them, until probably about March next year. And then hopefully we should get a really good early season spring harvest, kind of fill the hungry gap type thing. But I'm hoping that we'll be able to harvest some things all the way through winter. I'm trying to plant a garden where we can eat fresh food from it year round. This is my first year, so this is my first year growing in winter in the Polytunnel. So I'm still experimenting and I'm giving myself 3 years to perfect feeding us out of this garden. That might seem like a lot, but you know, it feels like I've been growing it for a long time already, and it's been one summer, that's all. I haven't done a winter in the Polytunnel. I don't know how this is going to go. So at the moment I'm just going based on past experience and what I think will happen. But each year that I do this, I'll be working on greater and greater experience. Now, a lot of people would fall back on books and things and decide how they're going to approach this from there. I don't like doing that. I think the best way you can learn how to manage your own piece of land is by trying things and possibly failing, because I find that a lot of the time you can find things that will grow better for you than they should do. So maybe the seed packet says that it's too late to plant it, but I'm of the mind that if it's on the cusp, have a go. The worst thing that's going to happen is it won't work, it might not work, but if you've got the room, it's better to have a try because it might just surprise you. So that's definitely the approach that I take. I'm a trial and error type of a gardener, and so I'm giving myself the 3 years to perfect this through trial and error, and then I think that I will be better informed than if I just read books and blogs and things and let other people decide how my piece of land is going to work best for me. Remember that, especially here in the UK, and it will be similar in other parts of the world, but you know, the UK is really it's quite a small country, but we have a huge number of little microclimates going on within a relatively small area. So your last frost date, for example, that you generally get, you could drive a few miles down the road and someone could be experiencing a very, very different frost date. And I think because of that, you can't just go by generic advice. What is going to work in the southeast, where it's mild and dry and things, it's going to be wildly different from what's going to work in the north of Scotland. You have to understand that generic advice is just that. It's advice that is supposed to work for everyone, ideally. So the best way to learn is by trial and error, I think. But you know, it's up to you. Now, as you can see, the Polytunnel still has a lot going on in it left over from summer. So we've still got loads of stuff. I have had a massive clear out in here, but we've still got lots of tomatoes that are still being really, really productive, even though it's October. We've got sweet potatoes that aren't finished, have my enormous loofah. We've got some other gourds down there, all sorts of things still going on. And then I've got a load of like subtropical perennials in here as well that will live in here all the time. So we've got a banana, we've got pomegranates, we've got all sorts of citrus, we've got pineapple, guava, lots and lots of different things, because I like to keep this interesting and an interesting mix. So what I plan to do firstly is plant down the back of the rows. So where the tomatoes are still in here, they are growing on espalier fencing. So down the back of that row, I'm going to plant cabbages and cauliflowers and kales all the way down the back. And then once the tomatoes are finally done, I'll pull them out, and then I'm going to plant peas all the way down this espalier fencing. So this runs down all the way down that side, all the way down the other side, and down the centre of the polytunnel. Now I reckon I can get a really good crop of early peas in the polytunnel by using the espalier fencing. So that's the plan, but that's for a bit later on. First of all, we're going to get the brassicas down the back, and we're going to do lettuces, winter hardy lettuces, all the way down the front of these raised beds. So there should be absolutely tons of food in all the raised beds. Okay, so I'm in behind the tomato dressing, and all the way down this line here, I'm going to plant cauliflower, cabbage, kale, and a few token sprouts, just for fun. I've never grown sprouts before, so it's time to give it a try and see what happens. Okay, so that's everything planted on the other side of the espalier fencing, on the back side of the tomatoes. So that is cauliflower, cabbage, whole load of broccoli, and a few token sprouts, just for fun. So now I'm going to plant the crops down the front side of the espalier fencing. And down this side, I've already put, you can see, a whole load of Chinese cabbages. So we've got Chinese cabbages the whole way down this run, and on the other side I'm going to plant lettuces all the way down there. So they're winter hardy lettuces. It should mean that we get winter salad all the way through until spring, hopefully. Now in the middle, between the two crops I planted, we've still got tomatoes in here, but they will come out once they're finally done, whenever that happens to be. And then I will put peas along here. But the reason I'm not doing it now, because I could theoretically direct sow them now, but I'm not going to, because I've had one big problem growing in this polytunnel. I have had an absolute mass of food out of here all summer long, which has been fantastic, but there's a real problem with mice. So as a result, I basically had no melons. So I had massive melon plants the whole way through here. I think we had about 3 melons total, and that's because they were just eating the little melons right off the plant. So I know that there's a lot of mice in here. Outside, Gigi the cat takes care out of mice in the garden, but she can't get in here because we close the doors at night to keep the temperature up. So that's my concern for the polytunnel. If something's going to go wrong, that's the thing that's going to go wrong. Now you've probably noticed that I've planted a lot in here, and I've planted things relatively close together, and that is because I'm basically mitigating risk. I'm working on the basis that we are going to lose some of these plants to mice. If not, it's going to be very full in here, but that's fine. I'm not that worried about planting close together. It's never been something that bothers me. But if we do get mice attacks, it means that I've still got a fighting chance at getting a decent harvest. Okay, I have planted out all my plug plants. We've got everything down the back of the rows. We've got Chinese cabbage along the front here. We've got lettuce down the front there. I have planted kale plants into basically every gap between the peppers and things that are still going at the moment, so that they can take over as they grow. And we've got kohlrabi going down the front of this bed here as well. So there's absolutely loads of food in here, but I'm left with this gap. Now here, this is pretty much bang in the middle of the polytunnel. And these are my dwarf tamarillos. So they're perennial, and there's not really any reason that they shouldn't overwinter all right. They're relatively hardy, especially with the protection of the polytunnel. So I'm expecting these to live, and therefore we've got this area underneath them that is spare and bare. So here I'm going to have a little bit of an experiment. So what I've done is I've just scattered in some albino beet seed. I haven't planted it in rows, or I haven't done anything particularly formal. I've just thinly scattered it across the surface and kind of worried it into the soil rather than pushing it down in. And we'll see what happens. On the other side, I've done a similar thing with some carrots. So nothing might come of it. It's very late, certainly for the beetroot. The carrots should probably be all right. But you know, you have got a lot of extra heat in here and a lot of humidity. So I think it'll be interesting to see what happens. They might grow, they might all germinate, but then grow for a bit and stop because of the light levels. And they might never bulb, or they might do really well. Anyway, we will see. Okay, so that's the polytunnel planted up. So we've got loads of food in here now. I'm hoping that it doesn't all get eaten by mice. Keep your fingers crossed, but at least I've planted in a sufficient quantity that I've given myself a fighting chance at least. So that's in here done. It's time to head outside now and plant some more crops in the outside part of the garden.